Hi, Alex.
Hey, Benji.
We are here to talk about Death on the Nile from 20th Century Studios, the I guess sequel to Murder on the Orient Express.
Yeah, I would call it a sequel, or at least what do they call them now? It's from the universe of Murder on the Orient Express.
So, based on another Agatha Christie novel with Detective Poirot, once again played by Kenneth Branagh, who also directed the film. And based on the sort of acclaimed novel, I don't know that I need to get into too much detail on Agatha Christie's history, because she is, well regarded as a genius in the mystery genre.
But it's still the best mystery, the best-selling mystery author, like in the present. Her books are still outselling James Patterson and all the other writers in that category.
So, what do you think?
I loved it. I was a huge fan of Murder on the Orient Express. That film left me wanting more. This one made me want more too. I hear it's doing well. I was nervous, just because this was a film in the can and ready to go before 2020 even happened. And so it's almost 2 years delayed, or almost 3 years delayed, right?
I feel like I guess I don't know when it was. It was probably about 2 years, because
it was originally going to be spring 2020,
right?
So yeah, 2 years. But yeah, I'm so glad it's out. I'm glad people are going to see it. I hope Disney doesn't take the state of the movie-going industry right now as a mark of failure on it, because it's not a failure at all. It's a huge achievement in filmmaking. I love it for being kind of throwback at the same time as very kind of state of the art in terms of the way it embraces technology. Certainly, there's been updates to the story that are more impactful for a modern audience, but they're still very faithful to the source material. So I think they've done a great job of kind of pleasing everybody that could possibly have interest ahead of seeing Death on the Nile. One of my favorite films this year, actually probably my favorite film so far this year, and a hard one to top.
Yeah, so it continues the Poirot story. This one actually gets a little bit more into him. His backstory starts with a prologue and sort of ends with an epilogue that focus on him as a character. That kind of bookends his life in a way. However, I do hope that they find ways to tell more. There's plenty of Poirot stories to be told. And, well, obviously Murder on the Orient Express and Death on the Nile are sort of some of the most famous. The way they've been able to, if you've read the books, there's definitely changes. There's less characters. Some of the characters change, some are kind of merged, but the basic idea is the same. But there's so much that changes around it that just adds a fun dynamic. There's a little more action to it because it's a movie, and the characters have there's sort of sub mysteries that are added into it that, so even if the main, what happens at the end of the book, there's still mystery elements to it, which is fun for a mystery that's so well known. It's sort of like, making Citizen Kane and pretending that Rosebud being a sled is a big reveal at the end.
I would also add, I think that Kenneth Branagh has done such an amazing job with those two, two of Agatha Christie's most well-known novels centered around Hercule Poirot. But I think they've almost done something similar to what what's his name? Beatles Get Back director, Lord of the Rings. Peter Jackson. What Peter Jackson did with Tolkien's source material, taking things from some of his expanded writings, including the appendices on Lord of the Rings, and fleshing out the Hobbit, but to a better quality of film. So there's flashbacks in Death on the Nile to that are probably, I'm by no means an Agatha Christie scholar, but I'm guessing that those backstories on like how he got the mustache, that's probably Agatha Christie canon.
I think that was made for the film.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was looking up the like publication history. There's been, so many Poirot novels and short stories written by Agatha Christie, and then her estate has even more recently allowed other people to write stories about him. But his life, kind of like Star Wars, like they basically mapped out like a timeline, like here's where this one takes place, here's where this one takes place, here's where this one takes place. And this film does have a little bit of carryover from Murder on the Orient Express. I wouldn't say it's a sequel, and Justin commented and said spin-off, and that's a good enough term for it, because you don't need to have seen Murder on the Orient Express to dive into Death on the Nile and know everything that's happening and not feel like you missed anything. But there are two characters that kind of carry over. Obviously, the one being Poirot, and then the other one being Book, played by Tom Bateman, who in this all-star cast is one of the few, I would say, fresh faces. I don't feel like I've seen him in anything outside of this franchise, but he really holds his own in that cast. And one of the things I think the film does really well, which I will also credit the Marvel films as doing really well, is having a really large ensemble and not letting that muddy the storytelling. Like they don't spend a lot of time on everyone's backstory, but they give you enough context clues, and it really kind of keeps you as an audience member on your toes, not only, trying to guess where the mystery is going if you don't know the ending because you read the book, but also just trying to figure out, because it's one of those stories where everybody has a good motive to have done the crime.
Yeah, and one thing that these stories have been told, in film media before, but the cinematic nature of this, with the pyramids and the beauty of it, I think is something that makes it different than the versions that were on PBS and BBC back in the day. And you just want to leave and go to Egypt. It's just so beautiful. I mean, not that I want to get murdered, but it's just in
the Egypt too. I mean, there's a glamour and a romance of the 1930s setting. Everything has that Art Deco aesthetic, including the ship that they're on for much of the film. And they do such a good job of recreating Egypt in the 1930s without, I'm assuming, ever going there. And certainly, like the vistas that they're looking at now are very different than what they would be then. But it has these beautiful sweeping shots. I love these shots where you get this big orchestral score following them as the camera like lifts up from the ship, like zooms down the Nile to like a port, and then like into the port, and then like to a tight close-up of a character without having a cutaway. It's the kind of filmmaking that is very modern, that you couldn't have done in the era, and yet they filmed this on film. And so there is film grain. It has a very filmic quality. It does not necessarily feel like a 2020 to 2022 produced film, but it definitely is in terms of the technology.
Well, and so, this is one of those franchises that Disney got with the acquisition, right? Like, this isn't something that was made, greenlit after 20th Century joined.
No, but it's also not like a huge legacy franchise. Like if my timing is correct, Murder on the Orient Express came out after Disney began negotiating to acquire 20th Century Studios, kind of like Greatest Showman. That's something they acquired, but I feel like the writing was on the wall that it was going to be Disney, and I feel like this was one of those things that would have felt at home on the Touchstone label, or even, I mean, it's adult content, it's mature, but there's nothing like sexual or anything that Disney wouldn't potentially put their own branding on, other than smoking, in both of these films.
Well, and Kenneth Branagh, it's interesting to see his career, because he has these films, which were beautiful, he's well known for his Shakespeare adaptations, starting from Henry V to Much Ado About Nothing and stuff. His, Belfast, which is a major contender for the Oscars this year, and then right before that, Artemis Fowl.
Yeah, and he for Disney, he also did Cinderella. And then as an actor outside of his directing work, I mean, I knew him best as Gilderoy Lockhart in Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets.
Well, and it's interesting to see his, I don't want to say range, but it's just interesting to see his career. I mean, as an actor and then also as a director. I mean, he's doing both in this film, and it's, at the same time being, an excellent actor. It's just he's just a weird character because not everything he does is great. Some of the things he does is kind of bad, but then when he's great, he's great.
Yeah, but like nobody has a perfect track record. Judi Dench doesn't. Like Meryl Streep doesn't.
Should we address that? So, Justin,
well, I do want to talk about the cast, which you can't do without talking about the hammer in the room. Which, if this film had been, released on time, had COVID not entered the picture, this may have beaten the news to the masses that canceled the sector. But yeah, Armie Hammer is a big role, not an insignificant role in the film. It is a huge cast. He plays in a love triangle opposite Gal Gadot. And then the other actress, I wasn't as familiar with, but she was fantastic. I'm trying to look up her name right now. And I mean, I consider Armie Hammer to be a good actor, and he does a great performance here. It's the kind of thing where after the initial introductory scene, where you kind of go, oh yeah, this is weird. After that, you kind of forget it. You just get lost in the character that he's playing. I'm not going to lie and say I know all about his contract for this film. I don't know if he continues to make money off it based on box office revenue or not. But I'm assuming when you buy a ticket to see Death on the Nile, you're not necessarily putting money directly in his pocket. He's already received the money he would have gotten for this anyway. So you're not.
And also, Armie Hammer has enough money just from.
And he's got way more money than I ever will. So. Okay.
And I don't just mean from acting. I just mean being a hammer.
Oh yeah. No, he had generational wealth without ever having to work.
Yeah. But and then, it's funny he mentions Hammer. I think Kenneth Branagh has a thing for hammers because he directed Thor.
Ah, that's right. I always forget about Thor in his canon of films. One of the things I really enjoyed about Death on the Nile was they feature a lot of particularly British comic actors in not necessarily comic roles. Dawn French and Jennifer Saunders are both in this as kind of a duo, like an heiress and her nurse companion. And Jennifer Saunders, I knew very well from Absolutely Fabulous. And when she came on the screen, I didn't really realize that she was in this going into it. So when she entered the picture, I was expecting, this to be like a laugh riot role. And it was actually quite serious for her. And then you particularly didn't recognize, it took me like half the movie to realize who the doctor was in the film, but it's Russell Brand in a very subdued performance for him, which was one of the standouts. He was amazing in it. And it was just one of those things where you didn't necessarily expect him to be in something like this and to have a serious part.
Yeah, it's Russell Brand. I mean, this does not get me to the Greek or whatever.
No, not at all. And then Letitia Wright, who I only embarrassingly knew from Black Panther, is also incredible in this. And yeah, I mean, I just loved everyone's performances. Everyone, like there wasn't a single performance in this that I would have elected to change. And it is unfortunate that one of the actors' personal lives caused any potential harm to the film's box office successes. But my take on it is always that it's not one person's film, especially this. It's such a huge ensemble piece. It would be such a shame for everyone to have to suffer for it. So that's my 2 cents that nobody asked for, but I highly recommend seeing Death on the Nile. And if that one person is what was holding you back, maybe wait until it comes on Hulu. But
don't
really
let it
great
hold you
film.
back. No one cares. I mean, like, you can't you can't hold this film hostage for one person, and it's meant to be seen on the big screen.
This was a really good big screen experience. If there was, I mean, we saw this kind of before Omicron had really kind of dissipated in our area. But Death on the Nile is a film worth dying for. But
wow. Anything else you guys say about Death on the Nile?
I mean, I honestly can't say enough good things about it. Even the score by Patrick Doyle, who Kenneth Branagh has worked with quite a few times, but his work kind of rose to my attention through the Harry Potter series. I think he started on Goblet of Fire and did like kind of the middle of the series, and then didn't do the 7th and 8th film. But I really respect him as a composer. I think he did an amazing score for this. I'm hoping it doesn't get overlooked next Oscar season. And I mean, literally the costume design, everything in this was top movie making. Just a high quality production all around.
Well, thanks, Alex. We are going to be back live at 4. Rebecca and Becca will be here for Barely Necessities to talk about merchandise.
Ooh, are they going to talk about some of the Funko news today?
I think so. I got some things to share with you that for your birthday. But you can check Laughing Place if you want a preview. But absolutely join them at 4:00 today for Barely Necessities, our merchandise show, and then I'll be back tomorrow at 1 with Mac for Marble Time, and we'll talk comic books. So, see you, everybody.